As we begin working our way through the text here, what we see first is the creation of animals on the sixth day. Animals are created and proliferate according to their kind. This means that the species is populated in the reproductive cycle in such a way that it produces the same kind of species. Dogs produce different types of dogs, but they don't produce penguins, right? They produce according to their kind. There's a coding that is written in from the very foundation, sewn into the DNA of everything that lives, a law by which it should proliferate. And God is the author of that coding. He's the one who thought that up and brought that into existence. This coding that's woven into the fabric of everything that lives functions according to the command of God. It continues to write more DNA and build more cells exactly to the specifications of what God has chosen. They proliferate according to their kind. And I want you to notice something here. Notice in verse 24, it says, and God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things and beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. This is a repeated theme that comes up again and again. But I also want you to notice it says living creatures. The word there in the Hebrew is an interesting word. It's actually nephesh. That's the Hebrew word. And it comes from the idea of breathing, to breathe air. So these creatures they become living creatures by the fact that they take in breath from the air. The word nephesh is used to talk about the life of these creatures, and it's used 753 times in the Bible in 683 verses. But out of those 753 times, 475 times it's translated soul. And what you'll notice here is that the animals have their own distinct personalities. They have their own instincts. They have their own unique breeding habits for the preservation of the species. And that God has designed all of this from the beginning. Now, what's interesting is that it stands in contrast with what God does in creating mankind. Because while animals become a nephesh, a living creature or a living soul, by breathing the air. Do you remember how it is that Adam comes alive? Adam is formed out of the dust of the ground in Genesis chapter 2, we're told. And then what animates him? What gives him life? Not the air that he breathes, although bodily he will breathe air. But the very first thing that gives him life is not the air around him, but it is, in fact, the breath of God. He becomes a living soul because he is animated by God himself. God imparts something of himself into Adam, as we'll see later, and as the story unfolds. But here is kind of an important framework for us to begin to think through. And that is this. You have sort of lower creation, the animal world, and then God steps up sort of a higher level of creation in creating mankind, that they will receive his breath and bear his image, as will unfold here. But the animals, sort of lower creation, mankind here, and then you have spiritual beings who are purely spiritual, sort of next level in the angelic realm, and then you have God who is infinite. And you see that there's this hierarchy, there's this order that is a part of God's created world. Now, a fun side note, animals become kind of living souls. And this is a question that comes up with kids a lot of times, or especially after, a pet dies. So animals are living souls. They have their own personalities and everything else, but will there be animals in heaven? And the question itself demonstrates that often we don't have a very robust eschatology or an understanding of the end times. Now, we don't have all the pieces in the scriptures, but we have enough to understand what God's plan is for eternity. In the words of Randy Alcorn, the famous author and pastor, he says that heaven is not our home. Heaven is not our home. Heaven is a sort of intermediary place for what is coming, the new heavens and the new earth that are at the end of time. And on the new heavens and the new earth, the prophets had a lot of things to say. Isaiah, for example, in Isaiah chapter 11, tells us that the wolf will lie down with the lamb, and that the lion will eat grass like an ox, that a child will be able to play over the hole in the ground that is the home of the poisonous adder without any fear. It's going to be a time of unparalleled peace, but it talks about these creatures, these animals that live in the new heavens and the new earth. Now, it's interesting as well that Romans chapter 8 tells us that all of creation is longing for that final moment where Jesus comes in the second coming and finally sets everything right. Why? Because the creation is longing for and groaning, hoping that the sons of God will be revealed, that the final redemption will take place so that they can be swept up in this new creation, the new heavens and the new earth as well. All of creation is longing for that. It's built into them. It's going to be more like the Garden of Eden, a setting of supernatural peace. Now, this is sort of anecdotal, but you guys remember when Jesus does come back in the second coming, what's he riding? A white horse. So for all the 12-year-old girls who draw horses, I've got good news for you. In the end, animals will still be there. God cares for his creation. Matter of fact, our set of verses here conclude in the middle of the day, instead of at the end of the day, in the middle of the day, and before God makes mankind, he looks over all the animals that he's made, and he says, it is good. Oh, this is good. Look at that. Look at the duck-billed platypus. I had leftover parts, and I just glued them all together, and look right here. This is so cool. Look at them. God loves his creation. He has a heart for what he has made. He loves his creation affectionately. He's pleased with it. He gives the animals distinct personalities and instincts, and even thinks ahead to a glorious time when even the animals will share in the redemption state of the world. And he looks down on everything he's made with all of that in mind, with all of that in front of him. He says, oh, this is good. The word good in Hebrew is tov. Tov. It's the same phrase that is used to describe the way that Eve assessed the fruit. She looked at the fruit in the Garden of Eden and said, oh, it's good for food. It's tov. It's the same word that is used by God when he talks about after the fall. He says, now mankind will know good, tov, and evil, ra. He's going to know what is good and what is corrupt. He's going to have this living in him now, this distinction. But when God looks at his created world and the animals that he's made, he says, oh, these are good. Now, recently, my son showed me it was a TikTok video. I don't know if you guys have kids that are on TikTok, but he shows me this TikTok video, and it's an excerpt from a documentary on octopuses. And he's showing me how octopi can camouflage themselves with just a thought. Like they can change the color of their skin. I don't know if you guys knew this, but there's some types that can change the color of their skin, and they also will swim in a pattern so they look like other creatures. So they look like one of those little flat fish that burrows down into the sand. They can swim in such a way that they look like a lionfish, and then they change their arms to like black and white stripes so they look like a predatory fish. I mean, it's incredible. And they do this like, boom. They're like, I would like to look like that. Ta-da! I do. That's incredible. I mean, you know how long the military has wanted to do something like that? Like all the billions of dollars that have been spent on trying to find some sort of cloaking technology that can help people do that? God says, oh yeah, that's easy. Octopus, B. It's his idea. He came up with that. And it's been hidden down in the bottom of the ocean. We only get to see it now because we've got scuba divers and, submarines and whatever else. But it's just been down there waiting to be discovered. The glory and magnificence of how great our God is. He delights it. Now think about this. We see these documentaries, we go, whoa, that's amazing. We find joy in it, delight in the discovery. And yet God was like, yeah, that's my creativity. That documentary, I actually came up with the concept. that came from my creative genius. And I just love watching you discover these things as you delve into science, as you delve into the arts. I love watching you pay attention to my creative genius and see the glory and the magnitude of who I am. I delight in that. Isn't it good? Isn't it good? I can't help but think about my own encounter this last fall with some monster bull elk over in Eastern Oregon. And on the one hand, you feel like there's a certain sort of, when you go hunting, like there's a certain sort of, manliness that you feel when you have like a knife and a bow and arrow and you just like paint it in camo. When you go out in the woods, you're like, I'm here to kill something, right? And then I see this elk, and there's some reprod in front of me. I could see the legs moving, right? And there's two bull elk on the other side of this reprod, maybe only 15, 20 yards away from me. And I can't get a shot through the trees, but underneath I can see the feet moving, and over the top of the trees, I can see the horns sort of passing by as they're walking near me. And all of a sudden, my bow and arrow felt really small. I found myself in front of this creature going, oh my goodness, look, I hope this thing works. I hope this does the trick. It's incredible. You say, but Jeremy, okay, I understand. In awe of creation, discovering the beauty of it, being in awe of how amazing and how big it is, and like those two ladies that almost got swallowed by the giant whale off the coast of California. You guys remember seeing that video? I mean, it's just nuts how big these critters are running around in the ocean. And you find yourself in awe of it. But Jeremy, doesn't that mean then that we should have a sort of awe of creation that keeps us from killing it, hunting it? What about eating meat? Is that a moral thing to do? Well, what you find is actually later in the scriptures, God is the first person to take the life of an animal. Remember, he is the one who slays a lamb in the garden and uses the skins to cover Adam and Eve. He also gives a command to Noah in Genesis chapter 9, verse 3, commanding him to eat meat. You'll remember the first murder that happens in the Bible happens over jealousy because a sacrifice is required to be given to the Lord. One is the fruit of the ground, and the other is an animal. And only one is accepted by the Lord. He accepts the death of that lamb that Abel offered. And then he institutes, of course, the sacrificial system and the eating of that. And on it goes, all the way into the New Testament with with the book of Acts, and Peter is commanded, one of my favorite verses, it's a life verse for me, rise, Pete, kill and eat. I feel like that's one of those mantras that is a part of my discipleship in the Lord. But in all seriousness, it seems to be that God is introducing an idea for us that is very important. In order for me to live, something else must die. And every meal is this proclamation that in order for me to have life, something else must die. When we bow our heads to give thanks for the food that God has given to us, we are in fact reenacting in that very moment the reality that in order for us to live, something else must die. It's an eternal proclamation. Now, this is incredible. So, does that mean we just aimlessly go killing creatures? I mean, is that how that's supposed to work? No, we're supposed to be stewards of the earth. The same way that God is a steward of the earth. He's made us to bear his image and not be abusers of his creation. Creation is to be stewarded for God, but not worshipped as though it were God. Now, here's the beauty of this. What that means is that anytime you mow your grass, anytime you're in the parking lot and you pick up a piece of garbage that somebody just carelessly threw on the ground, every time you load your bird feeder or do any good in the created world, you're actually partnering with God in the stewardship of his world. It's a really incredible thing that those small little acts are acts of worship and obedience and partnership with God in the stewardship of the world. When you feed your dog, pet your cat, you're actually functioning the way that God has created you to function. When we care for God's world, we reveal his heart for his creation. And so we see here in this short little passage here, the creation of these animals, and packed into that is God's affectionate love for these creatures. And along with that is an understanding for us where we fit in that. Because in the middle of the day, he looks over the animals and says, it's good. Okay, chapter, close, new chapter. And in verse 26, he sort of changes gears. Then God said, let us make man in our image. Now, on the same day that God made the animals, he's going to make man. But let's take notice of the distinct ways in which he does this. Remember, there's nothing that is preventing God from making man in the same way that he made all of the other creatures. He could just speak and man becomes a living thing. But he's illustrating for us something. He's drawing something out in order that we might see more clearly where we fit in his world. He specifically demonstrates the uniqueness of man in the creation story. Now, this is something that we're going to explore in greater detail as we step into chapter 2. But here, we're going to get a little bit more of the backstory as to the conversation God has in making man in the first place. After creating the animals, all of a sudden you're invited into this private conversation with God, where all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, things have seemed semi-singular all the way along in the creation story. And now all of a sudden he says, let us make man in our image. Notice the way the text shifts to a plural conversation. Now, there's some level of mystery around this portion of Scripture because of how suddenly there appears to be a plurality. And there's several solutions as to why. Some scholars refer to this use of the plural language as the majestic we, or the royal we, or the majestic plural. And it's the use of a plural pronoun to refer to a single person who is a monarch. So, like instead of talking about the queen, you'd say, we, this majestic sort of we in a plural format as a way of honoring her status. Others, however, see a historical understanding of something called the divine council that is referred to in the Psalms and in Deuteronomy. And the divine council seems to be this sort of council that God assembles of his created spiritual beings, these principalities and powers who have spiritual authority. And they've been given that authority by God to sort of spiritually rule over the earth. Still, others see the Trinity in conversation within this passage. So it would say this is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit speaking. And when God says, let us make man in our image, he's saying that mankind is sharing in, reflecting the Trinity. Now, regardless of how you view the use of the plural language here, the point is clear. God desires to share something of himself and of his rule with the created world. He seems to want there to be something that he can show of himself through the beings that he is about to make. He's saying, let us make man in our image. I want to demonstrate something of myself through the next thing that I'm about to make, mankind. And so, let us, he says. Then we have the creation story, make man. Now, from chapter 2, we find out that Adam is formed from the dust of the ground. The name Adam actually is a descriptor. It's the name in Hebrew means red like clay, because he was made from the dust of the earth. Now, this is something that the original audience, the Hebrew children who are traveling with Moses on their way to the Promised Land, that they would understand really very clearly. Because remember, what was it that they were doing in the work of Egypt? Making bricks, right? Forming bricks out of the clay. They would be very familiar with this idea of forming something out of clay, but then giving life to it is a whole different thing. Adam is from the earth, but then he's infused with something from God, the breath of God, in order to become a living soul. We find this out in Genesis 2:7. We learn that God made Adam from the dust of the earth and then took his own breath to give Adam life. And Adam also becomes a living nefesh, just like the animals. However, unlike the animals that draw air for life, Adam's first breath comes from God. Animals are spoken into existence by God's divine power, but Adam draws his life from the breath of God, and God imparts something of himself into the life of Adam. And Adam then is both terrestrial and spiritual, united in one being. He's terrestrial from the earth, and he's spiritual from God. This is an important thing because this sets up what we will be celebrating here in about 25 days. The Incarnation. The Son of God who is made man. Who is incarnated in the person of Jesus. So God says, let us make man terrestrial and spiritual. And then this third part, in our image and after our likeness. In our image and after our likeness. And then I'm going to share my dominion. Now, the idea of carrying the image and likeness of God. The word image here is tselem in the Hebrew. T-S-E-L-E-M. Tselem. The word has its origin in the root word meaning shade or shadow. So when light is casting a shadow on something, you get the image of what is there being cast onto the ground. It's used figuratively elsewhere to denote an image like an idol. So in Numbers chapter 33, verse 52, you have graven images. There's a great story. I've been thinking a lot about how do I illustrate this point for the body here at Heritage. So in 1 Samuel chapter 6, verse 11, there's this fantastic story how the Ark of the Covenant has been stolen by the Philistines. And they take the Ark of the Covenant, they put it in their own temple, the temple to Dagon, their god. And when they do that, they come in the morning, and Dagon has fallen over on his face before the ark. So they go, oh, our God fell down. So they take him, and they put him back up. They're like, don't fall down, God. And the next morning they come in, and he's fallen down, and now his arms and his head fell off, and just his torso is sitting there. And they're like, oh, our God's broke. Get the super glue, right? And so they have to fix him and put him back together. And then they pull the Ark of the Covenant out. They're like, hey, this is some bad mojo here. And they keep hanging on to it. They hang on to the Ark of the Covenant for about 7 months. But finally, what God does to change their minds, to give the Ark of the Covenant back to the people of Israel, is he strikes them with what the King James refers to as emerods. Literally, hemorrhoids. God is saying to the Philistines, you guys are kind of a pain in the butt. Right? Like, I want you to know what I think about you. Right? You guys are kind of a pain. Now, these guys don't know what to do with this, the Philistines. And so they get their diviners together, and then they say, well, how do we get this thing back to the children of Israel? And so they come up with this idea of getting these mother cows and tying them to a cart, and then they make golden cellums, images of their emerods. And they put them in a little box. Literally, golden statues, images, cellums of their hemorrhoids. Now, I don't know who posed for that. I'm not quite sure how that worked. The sculptor is doing the sculpting, and somebody else is, very uncomfortable in the moment. But they make some golden emerods, and they put them in a box, and they, put them next to the cart on the Ark of the Covenant and ship them back to Israel. And so the Israelites get there, and they get this box full of golden emerods, and they get like, what is this? There's some golden mice in there too, and they're like, man, these Philistines, I don't know what's going on with them over there. But God is making the Philistines to know that he's not pleased with them in that moment. This idea of image comes up again later on in the book of Daniel. Remember the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar makes. Now, I thought about, what would be the best way to illustrate this for our people? And so, since Mitch is the head of worship arts here, I brought some clay on stage. While I'm preaching, I'm going to have Mitch come up and sculpt some golden emerods for us. And I think it'll be a huge blessing to the whole church. It'll really bring to life this moment. Just kidding. But here is kind of the main deal. A cellum, an image, is used to make visible what is invisible. It represents the reality. It casts a shadow. That's the idea. Okay, so then let us make man in our image and after our likeness. Mankind is meant to cast a shadow, to make visible what is invisible about God. That's part of our created purpose. We're supposed to demonstrate his likeness by our existence. Now, I have to give credit here to Mike Robinson. It's nice when you have an elder who is a resident theologian. He's the president of Pacific Bible College, very smart guy, and he's been working with our elders on some doctrinal clarity. And we've had some really great studies, but we went through this passage or through this teaching on what it means to be an image bearer. This is called the doctrine of Imago Dei. Imago Dei is a Latin term. It just means image of God. He asks the question, like, okay, so what does it mean that we bear God's image? What does that actually give to us? What's being transferred there? And he said there's basically 4 views. The first one is called the substantive view, or sometimes it's called the structural view. And what it means is that it finds that we bear the image of God in the substance of what we are, or the qualities that we possess or carry. So capacity for love, intelligence, things like that, right? That the substance that makes us up, that's what mirrors or images God. Others, though, have what they call the relational view. And this sees God's image as expressed in our relationship to God and others. So we bear God's image in the way that we love others and love God. And that's how God is being revealed through humanity. The third view is called the functional view. So we have the substantive view, the relational view, and the third one is called the functional view. And this sees God's image as being expressed in what man does through carrying out God's rule and dominion in the earth and man's obedience to God. That's how we bear God's image. Now, there's some built-in weaknesses with each of those perspectives, but I'd like to sum them up with just kind of one idea. What do we do with humans who maybe don't have the capacity for relationship? What do we do with humans that aren't producing a whole lot to spread out God's rule and dominion in the earth? What do we do with humans who maybe don't possess certain innate qualities like intelligence or capacity for love because they're yet unborn, or because of some severe illness or accident, or because of their age and they're elderly? And they're no longer functioning in the same capacity or way that they did. But what happens then? Do they still have the ability to bear God's image? And this leads to the fourth perspective, the fourth view. And this is the one I really like. It's what's called the holistic view. This is a view that sees mankind bearing the image of God and expressing that image through the whole of the person. It's not either their functional ability or their relational ability or the qualities that they possess. Rather, it's all of these and more. It's the whole of the person that expresses what God is like. Their very existence expresses his image. And this is important for reasons that we'll get to as we wrap things up. But I want to just give you a little side note here that I think is worth thinking about. To bear God's image is both a gift and it is a goal. It's a gift in that you were born with it. It's something that is innate to your nature. You, by your very existence, demonstrate and represent the wisdom of God, the nature of God, the character of God by your existence. And this isn't something that's taken away because of the fall. It's something that is talked about again and again in Genesis chapter 9, verse 6. One of the foundational reasons that murder is not allowed, as God is talking to Noah, is that because mankind's blood should not be shed because he was made in the image of God. Later on, the book of James goes on to talk about how we can't, on the one hand, bless God with our mouths and give him worship and then curse our neighbor who's made in the image of God. So even how we use our words in relationship to talking about other people matters to God. He says that it's inconsistent. A freshwater spring cannot produce also salt water. So too, a mouth that lifts up praises to God cannot curse the ones who are made in his image. It's inconsistent. It's not right. So it's a gift that mankind already has by nature of the fact that they exist. But it's also a goal. A fallen person who is separated from God and does not know God still bears the image of God. But a person who is saved, who has come to know God, is also growing in Christ-likeness. They start this journey of beginning to be shaped and molded to become more like Jesus. They're being conformed to his image, which means we are increasing in our capacity to bear his image well, to not mar it. And it's something that will be fully realized at our glorification, our resurrection from the dead. And so mankind is created to be an image bearer. And then God shares his authority. He says, let them have dominion. Let them rule. Part of what it means to bear God's image and fulfill his purpose is to rule over the earth. And we'll get into that more next week as Paul talks to us about the cultural mandate, or what is often referred to as the cultural mandate. But suffice it to say, caring for and bringing order to the world is a part of how we are designed to work by instinct. It's a part of how God has made us. And I want you to notice also, let's not skip this last little part. So God, verse 27, created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. This is important. Notice that God, again, he has options here, right? He doesn't have to make Adam as one human and then separate from Adam Eve. He doesn't have to do that. He could make Adam and make Eve and breathe life into both of them. Like he could have Eve grow from a tree. Like he can do whatever he wants, right? He's not out of options, but he's demonstrating something for us. He starts mankind as a unity, as a way of complementing each other, working together in partnership with equality. There's something that God is illustrating for our benefit by waiting to separate Eve from Adam. He's emphasizing the complementarian value of the sexes. That male and female giftings and abilities accentuate different aspects of God's divine nature, both in the nurturing and in the protecting. We see different aspects of who God is being accentuated through distinct maleness and distinct femaleness. It's by design. God is imaged more fully and completely then by the unity of the sexes. And in marriage, we're told that the two become what? One. Adam starts as one, becomes two, gets married, is two, becomes one. See how that works? A unity that is there. God's original design favors unity and equality rather than a sort of hierarchical power struggle. It doesn't do away with the differences in responsibility. Rather, it highlights, as 1 Peter says, that we are co-heirs with Christ, laboring together for the kingdom. And that happens best when we're a partnership. Okay, so we asked 3 questions at the beginning. What does this text reveal about God? What does it reveal about us? And why does it matter? So let's go through those. What does it reveal about God? First of all, the special love that he has for man. How does man exist? God shared his breath. He shared his rule. And eventually he'll share his son. Oh, man. God has a unique love for man. It's not like the love that he has for angels or for the critters that are on the earth. There's something special and unique that God has for mankind. Second thing it reveals about God, notice the desire that he has to share himself and his rule. Man is charged with sharing God's image and his rule. And in taking up this calling, man will come to know the nature and character of God, not by just learning or observation, but by experiencing it. You see, you don't know the costliness of love except when you have to give it. You don't know how deeply you can be wounded and have to extend mercy, how painful it is to give mercy to someone who maybe doesn't deserve it, until you have to walk in that And in doing that, you are sharing in the sufferings of God himself. You're getting to know his heart. You're starting to understand the deep things of God as you walk in those things. In the exercise of these things, we are learning about what it costs God to love us and show mercy and grace to us. So notice his desire to share himself and his rule. Third thing that it reveals about God is his creative genius. Note the complexity of his creation. I remember back when Apple Watches came out, right? And I was like, man, I got to have one of those. I grew up watching like Inspector Gadget and spy movies and stuff. I'm like, that would be so cool. I get like talking to my watch. I can like walkie-talkie. I can answer emails, texts. It keeps track of my heart rate. I don't know why, but it does. Tells me whether or not I slept good. It's incredible. More amazing, though, than the watch that's on my wrist is the wrist that's under my watch. Every cell containing the entire genetic coding for my entire body. That's incredible. Right inside of my chest beats a heart that miraculously creates its own energy and electricity to keep beating. And it does that for, 80 years unless I keep eating bacon. Right? It's incredible. Notice God's creative genius. We wonder at the complexity of the Apple Watch, but oftentimes we pass right over the complexity of the human body and don't even understand it. Notice his care. Not only his creative genius, but his care. Everything has what it needs for life. God is a conservationist who seeks for us to partner with him in managing the food and the world that he's provided. So we see his care. We see his power. What does it reveal about God? We see his power. He made everything that exists. How did he do it? He did it. He just did. He's like, bam, let it be. And bam, it was. Because that's how powerful God is. That's incredible. We see his power. We see his purpose. He intends to dwell among his people and share with his creation. Man's capacity to be both of the earth and of God is what enables the incarnation to be a reality. God is thinking about Christmas even here at the beginning of creation. He's thinking about how he will redeem it before it even falls, and laying the groundwork for that. So what does it reveal to us, about man? First of all, our unique origin. Our unique origin from God's breath and the dust of the earth. Our unique calling. We're not just animals. We're from the dust of the ground, but also from the breath of God. Our unique calling. We share image. We reflect who God is, and dominion. Our unique responsibility, number 3. Our unique origin, number 1. Unique calling, number 2. Number 3, our unique responsibility. We are to glorify God and reflect his image. That's our calling in life. Number 5, Number 4, our unique destiny. We're created to live with and share in the labor of God for all of eternity. This is going to go on forever and ever. New heavens, new earth. We're still partnering with God and bringing order to his world. Forever and ever, we're going to get to enjoy how God has created us and what he's created us for. Number 5, our unique unity. We're created male and female from one man by design. God demonstrates that our unity and our equality as co-laborers in Christ is important to him. It's male and female, not male versus female. And God loves that. He set it up that way. And number 6, our unique value or dignity. Question, who did Jesus die for? Humans, those made in his image. Did he die for the angels? Nope. He died for the animals? Nope. He died for mankind. And the angels and the animals will participate in the joy of redemption, but God uses humanity as the vehicle for redemption. That's incredible. What a privilege. Okay, so why does it matter? Why do we care? A few things I want you to take note of. It matters because this is what helps us to understand why we care for creation. This is why we want to steward God's world, not destroy it. Taking seriously the fact that we're made in His image means that we're created to care for His creation, not decimate it, not destroy it. Why does it matter? Well, as those made in the image of God, we care about life. This is why we care about the unborn, the disabled, the handicapped, the elderly, because built into all of those people, even in their disability, is the image of God that should not be destroyed. And we ascribe value to that in the same way that God does. That's why murder is always wrong, in the womb and out of it. It's interesting, there's right now a kind of a current debate that's going on. Those who are outside of Christianity see Christians as hypocrites in this whole pandemic thing, right? Because of the resistance to wearing masks. And and they say, well, how can you say you love life on this side and then on the other side not want to protect it? Like you only love it in the womb, but you don't love it after the womb? And there's this tension. I think that's something that we have to think about, whether or not we're consistent in our values. We care about life. And we care about the issues of equality, of race, of sexes, and of social classes. We cannot agree with God's word and not care about those created in His image. We can't say, we're all made in the image of God, and then say, but you are a little bit less valuable because you weren't born in this country, or because you don't share the same skin tone, or because you're not the same sex as me. We can't do that. It's inconsistent. It doesn't make sense. This is why we care about those things. And lastly, for application, I think this is important for us to take note of. This also changes the way we relate to others. When we see the image of God in others, we're meant to honor it. And not only that, but when we see that we are made to bear the image of God, that means that I'm supposed to reflect who God is in some way. I'm revealing something about God in the way that I interact with my fellow man. And there's a huge responsibility in that. How might that change our marriages? How might that change our parenting? How might that change our neighboring? If we went into our lives, in day-to-day life, understanding that we are meant to carry, reflect, image, tselem, who God is, in the way we love our spouse, in the way we love our kids, in the way we love our neighbor. How incredible that is. If our calling is to image God to the people in our lives, what are they learning through the way we currently behave towards them? On many levels, I think, through examination, there's space for repentance. And there's growing for us all to do. Would you pray with me? Father, thank you for making us in your image. What an incredible privilege and what an awesome responsibility that is to carry that. Father, I don't even know that I can accurately define to the finest detail the amount of reverence that we should carry into that responsibility. But the world is getting a glimpse of who you are through the way that we live. God, let Christ be formed in us. Let your Son incarnate himself by the Holy Spirit through our lives. Conform us to his image. Grow our love, grow our capacity to care for our neighbors. Grow the depth of our understanding of your word. May we walk in this holy calling that we've received. You're our God. We're your people. Now, because of your Christ, your Son, who is living in us, may we grow in our capacity to reflect who you are to the world around us. We ask this in the name and for the glory of Jesus. Amen.